Hey, my name is Darren Martin. Yeah, I've decided to make this video because I've been concerned. Let's just say the topic for today is identity, because I see us going. I see myself. I'll speak for myself. I see myself going through an identity crisis. Um, as I look at it, it seems like one of the strongest influencing things in my life is the suggestion of what I identify with, what the who I think I am, what I think I am, and where did the answers to any of these questions that are posed by myself or others about my identity, do I answer for myself? Am I even allowed to answer for myself? Or must I conform to a set of categories created by another? Um, according to in 1963 when I was born, on this thing they call a birth certificate, my mother and father were classified as Negro. I assume that because they are a Negro, I must be a Negro too. So in 1963, I was born June 9th, 1963, 3 days before Medgar Evers was assassinated, and a lot of other things that happened in the 60s. So much happened in the 60s. I was so young. It was going over my head. At that time, I was too young to understand what was really going on. But by the 70s, especially the early 70s, I started picking up on what was going on. You know, and I'm, you know, got black pride. I'm black and I'm proud. Well, 13 years after I was born, May 12th, 1977, they came up with the categories for white and black and Hispanic and these things to keep, so the federal government could keep track and statistics of who's who and what, what, what's what. Now this is supposed to be, I guess, another identity change for me. Um, I'm not about to graduate from grade school, and they come up with this. Now I'm black. You know, you growing up watching Cooley High and seeing um, what's going on in real life, looking at different things, and Cornbread and me, just across 110th Street, Claudine, the Mac, some black exploitation films, and just all of the oh my goodness, the situation comedies, the all the different things they were blasting you with on television and in school and outside of school, the politics that were going on with Mayor Daley, um, not the son, but the father, senior, and just the different things that were going on. Um, so I'm wearing an afro and I'm black and I'm proud, and you know, heard the saying, if you're white, you're right. If you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you're mellow. These things were a part of the 70s. Um, uh, People were still being threatened. Um, we weren't allowed to go to the South Shore Country Club. They wouldn't allow blacks until 1975. And so, standing outside the gate, they would tell us, we wanted to find out what was going on. We were young. Um, anyway, just different things. So you're being told who you are. You know, I was chased by some white boys. My cousin and I were chased out of um, Evergreen Plaza and that area. Um, White boys with bats decided they didn't like where we were walking, so they chased us, and we were called all kinds of names. But the um, so growing up, being born in 1963, as a Negro, supposedly, right? 13 years later, black. Go to Mount Carmel, mostly white high school, college preparatory, all male, you know, Catholic. Um, they have their ideas. They teach what they want. It's impressed upon you to do so many different things, think particular ways. You identify this particular way, or you don't know who you are, and you will be treated like a buffoon if you question whether you're Negro or black. Um, so I would go to college, do these things, come out working, get married, have children, build a home, these things. Then I start questioning really, you know, what my identity is. By that time, I'm considered African American. Jesse Jackson and some people decide that Negro, black wasn't good enough, African American, you know, and oh, I'm riding with that. I like the idea, but does that really tell me who I am? Does it exclude, you know, the possible truth? You know, all because you want to make sure that you are included in the government funding for something, or um, you know, so they make sure they will shoot at you or treat you um, a particular way because of this classification, these categories. In the early 70s, we all had large afros. I had hair at the time, that's a funny thing, but and I had a large afro. And as we went to high school, that we started closing it, cutting our hair closer and closer, you know, and now like a lot of us are shaving our heads, um, and there's a lot of things changing, but a lot of us, you know, don't know exactly how to identify ourselves. Mainly, it appears to me as I've been looking into the truth of what an identity really is. Number one, it appears there's no such thing. Um, but if we were to have an identity, it would grow from the inside out, much like everything else in nature grows from the inside out. No one can tell you who you are. Only you can tell them who you are, and you show them, and you be who you are. And it is not a category. I am unique. No matter how many people look like me, or people say, well, I thought I saw your twin. I am me. And, I'm really not to be compared or categorized or classified, except for the fact that um, this so called government and a lot of people, it makes it easier for them to identify me by things on the outside of me: skin color, height, eye color, you know, categories, ethnic. I'm not with that. You look at the word ethnic, and you'll see. Uh, Look at the etymology. Look in the root. Look up the word identity. You notice it is id entity. And if you know anything about your true ancestors, um, English was not their language. Like my ancestors, English was not my ancestors' language. And English doesn't come close to helping me identify who I am. The language is incomplete. It lacks the necessary descriptors and components to even come close for me to say who I am or to say what I am. Um, you know, but now we want to fall back and say that I'm human, and I'm only human, that I'm um, not perfect and all these things, as if, you know, why would I not have an identity crisis when I'm not allowed to define anything about who I am? I must get my identity from the words and the meanings created by others, categories created by others, classifications created by others. And I'm supposed to feel a particular way, as a black. or an African American on the south side of Chicago, being a Democrat was automatic, not even to be questioned. Um, at least not in the parts, not with the people that I was aware of. Um, not that you are not able to discuss politics and what needs to be done for your loved ones, but the categories and classifications and the ideas and the philosophies and these things are hammered, and hammered hard. So why would I not have an identity crisis? How can I ensure and teach my children um, the importance of dealing with accuracy? How do I know what is accurate? Because I'm constantly, before I even reach the age of 40, um, I'm sorry, before I even reached the age of 30, my identity changed 3 times: Negro, Black, African American, before 30. Now I know that my my existence is not unique. Others are experiencing what I'm experiencing, and not everybody feels the same way I do about it. But the point I'm making is, I want you to think about what's really going on here, who you really are. And you are not a word, not an English word, no matter what. At best, it can refer to something you think about, but, you know, I can tell you this, that there is this identity crisis. I'm not alone. The so-called civil rights movement was hijacked. If you recognize what's going on, um, we are not doing better. Just one example, one very good example: 1968, the redlining, the laws that were about trying to bring some fairness to giving us access to different places to live, so that the banks that were loan money for us buying homes wouldn't exclude us from certain areas. Well, that was 1968. Some 40 years later, 50 years later, 2018, here we are. Didn't we just experience some 10 years ago the worst housing crisis ever? The biggest crime ever committed. The people who own the homes that were turned upside down, and a lot of bad loans were created by these criminals. This was not my wording. This was the wording. They said it was the biggest crime. Yet the criminals, were too big to fail. So we bailed out the criminals and left the people in worse conditions than ever. Wow. Why would we not have an identity crisis? Why would we want to remain um, allegiant to terms and categories that do not benefit us? And why won't we go ahead and take the time to figure out who we really are, determine for ourselves who we really are, and tell them that they don't have the power to control who we are, and certainly not by definition. Not giving someone else the power, the authority to be the author of a term that I will identify with. Won't do it. I mean, I've learned enough to know better, and I have enough guts to stand up and deal with it. Now I know there are still people with guns and nooses and white hoods and suits, and the banksters on Wall Street, and the gangsters in the different um, high-rise buildings, and the ones that are seen and not seen, the politicians, that think they have the power to determine who you are and what you can afford and what you're gonna do. They want to control every part, every transaction you have, every relationship you have. And actually, they're doing a pretty good job of coercing. And so I'm just merely suggesting that take a look at the fiery foundation of the majority of what's going on, you will find it with your identity. And you will find that it's a crisis simply because you don't know. You haven't asked questions. Don't be afraid. Get together. Start, having the courage to find out who you really are. And I'm not talking about on the inside, on the outside, where people are so concerned about the colors and the categories and things of that nature, the race, and that's a bunch of crap. Um, I'm talking about what makes you and who you really are. You are not defined by anyone else. You are who you are before you even get to know them. But they think the moment they see you, they can tell you who you are, and that they have the power to determine who you are, where you're going to go, what you can do with what you create, with your children, with your own hands, with your body. How free you are, you know, is based on how they define the categories that you identify with. How much money you make has a lot to do with what you think your identity is, who you think you are. If you think you are poor, odds are you're going to act that way. And if you think you are ignorant, if you think that you are intelligent and yet ignorant of who you really are, take a look around you. Take a look around you. How many people have ever questioned who they really are beyond the categories? And I know it sounds like something that's a waste of time for. I know who I am. You know, people beat their chest. I'm a grown man. I know who I am. Blah 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 blah. Let's get real. It's time for us to start recognizing that everything in nature grows from the inside out, including your identity. And it's only a crisis because you don't know who you are, because you haven't taken the time to determine for yourself who you are. Why do you think the self-determination is so valuable? Sovereignty is based on your ability to determine for yourself who you are, what you're going to do, who you're going to relate with, and how you're going to relate with them. What's going to be transacted between you and them. Um, whether that be your family, whether that be yourself, you know, will you put yourself down because you think of yourself as Negro or Black or African American because someone else is painting, so many other derogatory emotions and thoughts associated with a Black man or a Black woman? Um, I've swallowed that for years. Didn't know how to deal with it because every time something good happened, I felt it. Every time something bad happened, I felt it. And I was attempting to make sense of it. And this crisis continues. Um, I felt like, and I still feel that a lot of us, and myself, let me just speak for myself, that um, whatever I identify with, if someone else has control of it, I don't have control of myself if I identify with it. They can determine how good I feel about myself if they change, as they have changed, the so-called category that I've identified with, as I described. Um, yeah, I want you to just take a look and think about what that has meant in your life. Anybody that's over 50, how many times has your identity changed? How many times have you been struggling to find out, you know, am I black enough, or, am I down enough? Am I um, just a long list of stupid um, things to to control you, um, and suggestions that we went along with without ever questioning it. I know I felt like an idiot when I discovered how valuable these questions are that I had never asked. I was too busy reacting to somebody calling me a nigger or chasing me, or um, cops pulling me over, you know, patting me down, or wanting to declare me a criminal before even getting to know me. Just the color of my skin, the fact that I was a man was good. It was enough for them. and enough for so many people, even in amongst our so-called black people. We look at ourselves with certain amount of negativity, and we haven't been able to escape it yet because we haven't taken control of what our identity really is. We don't know who we are, and we've been afraid to ask, and we've been afraid to step away from that so-called foundation. We've been trying to put as much pride into being black, into being African American as we possibly can, but that's not going to be good enough. No, not as long as somebody else holds the pen to your identity. Yes, who knows how many years it's going to be before someone says, we're no longer African American. Study has been done that, and now it shows that blah 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 blah. Someone else is yet science has determined for you who you are. Something outside of you, and you'll feel like you're on that seesaw, not knowing if you're ever going to be flipped off of it. So, take the time to question your reality. Who are you really? How many native tribes do you have from here? And if you really who you think you are, and does anything that you've ever read or heard someone call you, or the categories that have been given, does it really apply? How much of what you're living is really true? You can start with your identity. That's a real strong one. I know if you start to question it, you'll recognize how little is truly known. And it's going to be up to you to have the courage to determine for yourself something beyond what we've been fed, something beyond what was said, something beyond what was told and sold to you, so that you can start to determine for yourself a new life, new power, self-determination. You become your own authority. You start to define yourself. You know, oh my goodness, it's huge. So um, I'm gonna go for now. This is longer than I thought it would be, but thanks for listening, and let me know what you think.